So how do we educate our kids from early on? Which also means, how are we modeling for our kids? What are they seeing us eating, right? So it's kind of hard to say, don't eat that while you're eating that. Don't drink that soda while you're putting down a big gulp.
I'm Dalia Colon, and this is The Zest. Citrus, seafood, Spanish flavor, and Southern charm. The Zest celebrates cuisine and community in the Sunshine State. Today, we got to talk about ultra-processed foods, what they're doing to our kids, and how we can reverse course. Today, we're getting real about what we feed kids. Whether or not you have children of your own, we all have a role to play in helping the next generation make healthier choices. Now, our guest, Dr. David Berger, isn't here to shame anyone. Let's get that out of the way. But as a pediatrician and the face of Wholistic Pediatrics and Family Care in Tampa, he sees every day how nutrition, or lack thereof, affects kids' health and behavior. I visited Dr. David at his office on his lunch break. In our conversation, he explains why kids and adults should steer clear of ultra-processed foods. He also reflects on why many school lunches are problematic, surprise, surprise, and he offers advice for all of us to get back on track.
Well, growing up, Mom pretty much made stuff because I was a pretty picky eater. So I probably had a lot of peanut butter and jelly, and it had to be with my crust cut off. It had to be in triangles, not in rectangles.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Okay. I was packing my own lunch when I was like 7.
Yeah. Yeah. By the time I got to high school, we were allowed to leave the campus. So we had a lot of healthy Burger King, McDonald's, and pizza.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yes, living the dream. All right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Florida in the Plantation, Hollywood area.
Cool. So not too far away.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how would you say school lunches have changed since those days of you driving around getting your McDonald's?
Well, I don't know how much they've changed because I don't know how good they've ever been. Let's maybe start there,
Fair.
right? The issue is that they're getting, obviously, not a lot of fresh foods, obviously fruits and vegetables maybe, but how they're prepared. But a lot of these are prepared, prepackaged with ultra-processed ingredients, so there's not a lot of whole food going on there. So there's a lot more sodium in there. Now that, they even have these prepackaged foods like the Lunchables that are available, and that's become a problem. They pulled the two out of the school system because they actually found that they had more salt in them than the regular Lunchables, and there was some concerns about lead as well.
They pulled what out of
the Lunchables, like where the kids would go buy the packet and go heat it up, and like if they were in middle school or whatever, or higher where they can heat it up in the microwave, they actually pulled them off because they were two products that Lunchables made specific for schools to be given out in the cafeterias. They turned out to be less healthy than the regular Lunchables, which aren't that healthy in the first place, and so they're being pulled. I believe the manufacturer stopped making them because of the complaints.
Oh, wow. Okay, what is a healthier alternative? Because the Lunchables, they come in the package. Sometimes there's a little treat in there. Kids love them. They're
like
cheap.
A Happy Meal.
Yeah, basically.
Right. Well, the alternative is eating whole foods, freshly prepared foods, which I realize is a problem, and I realize that it's not something all families can do due to time, due to cost. I realize that, there are lots of issues financially and time otherwise that make it a challenge to eat more healthy, and that's part of the problem.
I mean, I could sit on my high horse and say my kids don't eat cafeteria food and my kids don't eat Lunchables, but my daughter can eat like a whole jar of Nutella in one sitting. So I'm not here to judge anyone, but what else are you seeing in lunch boxes that is alarming?
Well, and again, it depends on what, even what people are sending. Are they sending their kids with chips or pretzels, or what are they sending for? So an important thing to understand is the real concern is when it comes to ultra processed foods. Okay, so processed foods are not a problem. You put a smoothie in a food processor, that's a processed food. Peeling a potato, you've processed that potato to a certain extent. So the real question is what is else in there? So for instance, a person who is getting tortilla chips, not talking about Doritos with the added flavorings in it, but just a tortilla chip that may just have the corn that's shaped into a triangle and some salt and fried. Or same thing with unflavored potato chips, like just, not barbecue flavor or Cool Ranch flavored. A potato chip itself, if all it is a sliced potato, salt, and oil, that's not considered an ultra-processed food. It's obviously still processed, May not be the healthiest thing in the world, but it's not nearly the same thing as if there's flavorings added and all of those additives that could be to a chip as well.
Okay, so if I'm just looking at the package, how do I know if it's processed or ultra processed?
So I probably look at the ingredient list. Okay, so first of all, if it's got chemical names in it, it probably is ultra processed. Okay, if it says added sugar to it, so as opposed to natural sugar, so there's going to be some sugar and some carb in corn, right? But does it have added sugar to it? Right? Especially if it says high fructose corn syrup. Anything that has high fructose corn syrup in it, you already know what that is. That's already an ultra processed food.
All right, let's talk about the cafeteria lunches.
Yeah.
What do you think of those?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what's happening at the school level. So, obviously there's certain requirements to be considered a school meal, but you'd have to really get into what is the cafeteria serving in order to be able to answer that question appropriately. So certainly that's a fair question for every parent to ask. What do you put in my kid's mouth when I'm not there? But really to know that. And then also, even with going through the cafeteria, most kids get choices.
I know.
Right? So is the kid picking a grilled chicken or is the kid picking mac and cheese? So I think a lot of what has to happen, which is why I like to, start at such an early age, even before school starts, teaching healthy eating. What are healthy foods? What are not healthy foods? I'm not an absolutist. If a kid's going to go to a birthday party and they're going to have cake, every cake is pretty much going to be ultra processed unless it's like a homemade, from scratch type of thing. So how do we educate our kids from early on? Which also means how are we modeling for our kids? What are they seeing us eating, right? So if they, it's kind of hard to say, don't eat that while you're eating that. Don't drink that soda while you're putting down a big gulp. So how we model things for our kids is huge because it's not fair to a kid to expect to have a different outcome if we're not modeling it.
Right, for sure. I remember my daughter is now 12, and when she was 2, 3, 4, my friend said, the chicken nugget is inevitable. I remember my friend Nicole said that because up to that point, my daughter Nora, I was giving her like salmon and edamame and brown rice, and she was eating all of it. But my friend said, they're going to go to a birthday party. They're going to go to somebody's house, and all your years of effort to help them eat healthy are just going to be out the window because they will develop a taste for the birthday cake and the chicken nuggets.
And can we explain to them that those are special occasions versus every day? Okay, that's what I was meaning by I try not to be an absolutist because I'm a realist, okay? And if you're going to send your kid to a birthday party and you're going to give them their own baggie and they have to sit in the corner, we're at a party, this is a special time, and so we're going to allow ourselves to do it this time. So a lot of it has to do with how we are educating our kids before they walk into that room.
Okay, so you're a physician. We're in your office. I love that we're here. It's so colorful. How does all of this ultra-processed food affect our kids?
Great. Okay, so a couple of things. So ultra-processed foods has definitely been associated with long-term issues. We know for sure cardiovascular issues, gut health issues, etc. So I'm going to speak now from what we call a functional medicine perspective. Okay, some people will use the term holistic. I use the word function because it basically answers a very important question. How are you functioning? How's your body functioning? Okay, so when a person is not given healthy foods, there can be more inflammation in their intestines. Okay, inflammation over time builds up because inflammation doesn't just stay there. The chemicals that our body makes from inflammation circulates through our body, circulates to our heart, circulates to our joints. In terms of even trying to keep things like autoimmune diseases from developing over time, right? The more inflammation that our body has circulating, the more inflammation that can get into the areas that we don't want to have inflammation. Right? And therefore, things get access to our bloodstream, even immunologically, because our immune system, it recognizes foreign substances.
Oh, wow.
So and obviously part of this is also what we call our microbiome, the levels of the good flora that's supposed to be there. That's why we also encourage people to eat fermented foods, be it yogurts. And when we mean yogurts, we mean probiotic containing yogurts. You have to read your if it just says with active cultures on it, it's not really the kind of cultures that our microbiome needs. So even like when you're eating a yogurt, it should say with probiotic cultures, not just with active cultures. So you have to read labels.
When my son was a baby, I made all my kids' baby food. I used to make these yogurt pouches because I didn't want to buy the yogurt pouches. And now for breakfast this morning, he had the vanilla yogurt that comes with M&Ms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
How did we slide down so far?
Well, how did you slide down? What do you think it was? Well, you got there somehow.
I know. You know what? I think it's time. I think I'm pressed for time. And so when I find something that they will eat, I just want them to eat it. And I don't care if it's like a chicken patty that's like what they get in the cafeteria at school. I don't care if it's yogurt with M&Ms. I just want them to eat so we can get on with our day and then they can go to sleep.
Okay, well then you know what happened.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, part of our job as parents is obviously doing the best we can. Okay, I didn't say perfect. And sometimes we do pick and choose our battles. Okay?
True.
And maybe we decide, okay, I'm okay with this one less than healthy food a day, but I'm not going to do 10 less than healthy foods per day.
Good point.
So we, everything is in moderation on what we can do. Don't make huge changes fast. Okay. It took a while to get into this. Don't expect to fix this tomorrow. It may take a year or two for you to make a kind of transition. But part of this is also because, kids are also, let's face it, they're pretty resilient. Okay, it's not like they're having, God forbid, heart attacks or high blood pressure or high cholesterol when they're 12. Maybe the cholesterol, but not the other stuff, right?
Wow.
So part of this is also helping educate them so that they will make right choices when they are adults.
Yes.
Okay, because not as many adults are craving M&Ms as they are when they're little kids. So again, how are we educating them for the bigger picture?
Okay, so we talked about how it's affecting them physically. What about behavior-wise? Are you seeing people with behavior issues that could be caused by some of these foods?
Yeah, and that's part of the concern. Now, in my patient population, there's two different patient populations that I serve. Those who come to me from very early on because they have a more natural bend in the first place, and they want to make sure that they're doing everything right. And they're the families who are not giving their kids artificial this and artificial that from the get-go. But I also have a large population of people who transfer into the practice because they're having problems, whether it's neurodevelopmentally on the autism spectrum, ADD spectrum, whether it's they're having chronic GI problems or chronic constipation problems, or allergies, asthma, eczema, autoimmune, like hyper-inflammatory conditions, or what I like to call immune systems gone wild. So when people are coming to me with those problems and say, how do I reverse it? Clean eating is a very important part of it.
A lot of us have gotten way far off the track. We can't even see the track at this point. How do we start to reverse course? Earlier you said it might take a year. What would be your first step?
The first step has to be education. Okay, so part of why I talk to kids and not just to parents in my checkups once the kid's over about age 5 is I'm engaging them. First of all, let's face it, parents aren't always necessarily the best messenger when it comes to these things. Hearing it from somebody else is important, okay? And it's also important to establish a good relationship and a rapport. So I don't necessarily layer the hammer the first time. I'll talk about it a little bit, kind of like plant the seed, kind of see what else is going on. But I'm not going to sit there and say you need to be on a macrobiotic 100% casein gluten taste-free diet, to start off with. But hey, let's talk about your diet. Even talking to a kid, what have you learned about what foods are healthy and unhealthy? Can you name me some healthy foods? Can you name me some unhealthy foods? Engaging the kid in an active back and forth, and especially when it comes to a teenager, you can't lecture to them, right? As soon as you start, you're 10 seconds into any lecture with a teenager, it's turned off, right? You might as well be talking to the wall. When you engage somebody in the conversation, then it's a back and forth, and letting them know, especially with the older kids, I'm here for you. You can ask me questions directly. You can send me questions in the patient portal. You can come to your next checkup with a list of things to talk about because, I view myself, what I tell people is I'm an educator and a facilitator. I'm not a dictator.
I like that.
Yeah. And I'm here to help educate. And most people, when it's explained to them, as opposed to just don't do that, why? Because it'll make you fat, which of course we try not to use those words anyways, but but to say, hey, this is a type of thing that, that may be why you're having asthma attacks. And we may be able to, and as, and I also, when I talk to kids, I try to relate personal stories. So, when I was 7 years old and I had my first asthma attack being rushed to the hospital, I know how bad that felt. I would hope nobody has to feel that way. And so, maybe that these are part of I can give you a medicine for your asthma inhaler, but your problem is not an inhaler deficiency. Right? But your problem could be a vitamin D or zinc deficiency. Your problem could be that you're eating foods that's triggering your immune system to create it.
Would you say sugar is the biggest trigger for most people?
Well,
Sugar?
I'd say it is, but it's also because it's addictive, so that it's hard to stop.
Right.
And want more. I want another cookie. I want another cookie.
Of
I want another
course.
cookie. Right. So, moderation. So obviously, not starting in the first place is a good way to not have to worry about how do I stop.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, and again, part of this is the individuality. Okay. And so I realize that there's a big difference when the government is making a recommendation for everybody. And that's important information, and hopefully it trickles down. I look at that there's a difference between public healthcare policy and private healthcare policy, and what the individual needs to do is not going to necessarily be the boilerplate that the Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, or CDC says, because we're all different and we can all get away with things. My kids with autism who may restrict themselves to only 3 foods. I'm not going to just say, and they're all unhealthy foods. Well, I'm not necessarily starting that kid on a get your kid to sawdust mode, right? But I will talk to them about some of those other things that we talk about, the nutritional deficiencies, working with the family and being able to assess, where are we at? What can you do as a parent? That could be a rate limiting step. If a mom's having to work 2 jobs and is barely home to tuck their kids at home tonight, and cuddle with them a little bit, which is unfortunate, but that's the way sometimes it is. That's not somebody who's necessarily going to be able to do a lot of food prep, right? But then you could even talk about, let's talk about reading labels, okay? Look at a bag of Fritos versus a bag of just tortilla corn chips. See the difference. You'll see that there's a difference there. One of the things we didn't really talk about yet are the issues with plastics and nanoplastics and microplastics, and they're showing that those are now becoming issues with development as well.
Oh.
So, for instance, a packaged container that has a liquid in it, like a sauce or a yogurt, like a type of thing, versus lettuce in a packaged container. The liquid's coming much more in contact with that plastic than the lettuce is, right? It's just not smushed up against it. It's, and every crevice is there. So, even when it comes to packaged products, there's differences there too.
Oh my gosh. This is a lot.
It is a lot, I know.
Being a parent is so hard.
It can be a shock to listen to hear it all. I know it is.
Okay. Wow. I could talk to you all day. How can schools and parents navigate special diets? Because we have kids who may have allergies, as we discussed, or they're gluten-free or vegetarian or kosher, etc.
Right. Well, first and foremost, doctor's notes help a lot, right? So the power of the pen, the initials after I have on my name, I realize makes me quite a powerful person in this society, okay? I choose to use that for good. And so if there's an issue, I'm writing a school note, and a parent's well, they're not going to do that. I'm like, if your kid had a peanut allergy, they're going to do everything that they can because they know that they're going to get sued because a doctor did this. So if you have to lay down the law with a doctor's note and say, hey, listen, I know that you're not following regulations if you're letting my kid eat this, so if somebody has to be there to watch your kid, then someone has to be there to watch your kid. And it may take some time, they may need to bring an aide in or something to watch. And of course, all schools have funding problems themselves, but this is your kid. Right? And you have to be proactive about these things. And of course, the mom who has working 2 jobs who can't get into the school, whereas other parents can go in and have a face-to-face. And of course, a face-to-face is going to be likely to be more helpful. So, our society and our systems ain't helping. Right? It's a big problem, especially in underserved communities, minority communities. It's so much worse. Right. And those are the families that may not even be able to get to the dentist as often. So, it's just it's so unfortunate that the haves and the have-nots just become more obvious, and it accelerates because of the way our society is.
For sure. I feel like that's especially true with food because once you have the knowledge, do you have the ability, the time, the resources to actually prepare the food this way?
We didn't even talk about organic versus non-organic. Okay, and pesticides, okay? So one of the things that are you familiar with the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something that I tell every parent about. Yes, in a perfect world, we can afford and have availability for all organic food. Availability is one thing and the cost is another thing. So, for instance, strawberries, okay? Strawberries, they almost look like a sponge. Right? I mean, there's the most sponge-like thing that you can eat besides sponge. Strawberries is the most pesticide-laden of all the produce.
The top of the dirty dozen.
The top of the dirty dozen list. So what I tell people is, if you can be selective, choose from the Clean 15. Maybe if your kid really likes strawberries, maybe you are buying strawberries that are organic, but something that's also in the Clean 15 you're okay with. Mm-hmm. So there's that type of aspect of it as well.
Okay.
Okay. And of course, even teaching our kids that what the Clean 15 is, because they're probably not getting organic foods at school.
Oh, they're not.
Right. But you can teach them what those foods are that are the most pesticide filled, and and try to avoid those. Right. And so all of those things do help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, I just need more time. Like 18 years is not enough.
Yeah, and I am working on a 28-hour work day. I'm 24-hour day. I'm trying to fix the clock, so you have 4 hours of extra.
Yeah, I would
spare
appreciate
time.
that.
So I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I'm beta testing it now. I'll let you know when it's available.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
If you could get on that,
yeah, I'm working.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay, last question.
Yes.
If you were in charge of the school cafeteria at my kid's school, what would you put on the menu? What's like a perfect Dr. David lunch?
Grilled chicken, as opposed to baked. And again, baked could be fine, but and even it could be breaded. If it's breaded with some panko and some seasonings, as opposed to God only knows what's in a McNugget, right? So there are those types of things. And again, even looking at those labels for nuggets, coming back to your nugget story, okay? But would I like to see an apple or a banana or some other kind of easy to hand along fruit? Sure. Bowl of grapes, right? We can certainly do that. Could we maybe have some carrots or some celery or maybe some red and yellow peppers that are not as bitter as the green peppers? So, there are things that we can do that. That can be even on the most basic level. Can we offer a piece of fish, as opposed to a filet-o-fish, right? Sorry, McDonald's, I know I'm bashing you pretty hard right now, but you deserve it.
They will never sponsor this podcast.
You deserve it. So it's those things and just, but also, form a committee at the school. The PTA can form a committee that meets with the administration and the school people. Hey, we want to know what you're feeding our kids. Can you please, in the next 2 weeks, present us with all of the ingredients of all the products that you're doing? Can we sit together and see if there's any other options?
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, man, this is a lot. All right, I'm going to start. I don't know what I'm going to start with. I'm going to think of one takeaway. Do you have advice? What should be my one next step?
Educate your kids.
Educate my kids. Okay.
Talk to them about healthy eating, why it's important. It's sometimes hard because, it's hard to say don't eat all those fried foods so you don't get a heart attack 50 years from now.
Right.
Right? But, it's a start as to those types of things. And
Yeah.
But also, maybe since there's very few perfect people who have worked this world, where is the kid's sleep issue off? Where is there an area where things are less than perfect for that individual that you could even potentially say, hey, maybe your tummy won't hurt so much. Hey, maybe your skin won't scratch so much. If we take a healthier approach to these things, because I think you never say for sure. You never want to say something that you can then be proven false, because then that loses the trust in the kid. But I talked to the doctor. I've been reading about this, and I think that the rashes could be contributing to that.
Right.
Hey, let's see if we can do things so that you're not scratching your skin up. Hey, let's see if we could do anything that can help your sleep. Hey, let's see if we could do anything that makes maybe they have depression or anxiety. Again, the same thing falls in. So this whole concept of functional medicine, when people say like, what do you do? I do what ails you. But everybody, if your vitamin D levels are off, if your zinc levels off, if your intestinal microbiome is off, if you're eating unhealthy, can cause any of those conditions or exacerbate.
For sure.
Right. But that's where I would start with educating the kid and see if there is a weaker area that a kid could be encouraged to help that out.
Sure. Hey, maybe you would perform better in your soccer game.
Right. Maybe you'd do better with your
nuggets.
grades. Maybe you wouldn't have your attention. Hey, maybe you wouldn't be fighting with your friends. Hey, maybe this, that, or the other, right? Maybe you wouldn't be getting in trouble in school.
That's good.
Whatever you find that one thing is that they want to change, because obviously if they don't want to change it, then that's different. But, having an open-ended conversation, what are the things in your life that you think could be better?
I love that. And
Right?
plant a garden. Planting
plant a garden. Right.
encourages the kids to eat the food.
And if they can, help them cook.
Yes.
Let them help you cook, I meant to say.
For sure.
Right?
No, I want to help my kids cook.
There you go. Right. But having them but that way they're invested into what's going to the body. There's a pride.
Yeah.
When you make your food and you eat it, there's a pride. There's a self-sufficiency that is just natural. You don't have to even discuss that it happened. It just happened.
Yeah. Wow. So many good tips. Okay, Dr. David, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of kids' diets and school lunches? I do have a question.
Please.
I keep saying last question, but you keep saying more interesting things. I've heard you use the phrase healthy and unhealthy foods. Now, I've heard other people say there are no bad foods. They're just some foods we eat sometimes and some foods we eat every day. Where do you stand on that?
Right. Well, that's why I didn't use the word bad and good.
Okay.
Right. And maybe even probably healthier and less healthy foods.
Gotcha.
Right. Because you don't want to sugarcoat it, not to make it the point. I don't want to blow it off so much or de-emphasize it so much that it's not going to hit home. So it's kind of like finding that happy medium, What can we do to be healthier, right? America as a whole, we're sick. We're unhealthy. Look at obesity. Look at every other thing that's going on in our society. A lot of that's because of what we're doing to ourselves.
And we are doing it to ourselves because America makes it so hard.
Right.
Other countries don't make it this hard.
Right.
All right. Well, Dr. David, it's been really fun to talk to you.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to watch your podcast. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
This was fun.
Absolutely. It sure was.
That was pediatrician Dr. David Berger of Wholistic Pediatrics and Family Care in Tampa. I know you want to hear more hot takes from him, so you got to check out his YouTube channel, Dr. David MD. He addresses issues ranging from fluoride in drinking water, the raw milk trend, the FDA's recent banning of red dye number 3, and a whole lot more. You can find a link to Dr. David's YouTube channel in the show notes, wherever you're listening to this episode, or on our website, thezestpodcast.com. I'm Dalia Colon. I produce The Zest with Andrew Lucas and Alexandria Ebron. The Zest is a production of WUSF. Copyright 2025, part of the NPR network.